to be live on Facebook. I'm going to be
We are
tuning in.
live on YouTube as well, so we're good to go.
Cool, Brian. Why don't you give us the official happy hour intro, and then we'll kind of take it off the rails and go talk some cool winter stories for everybody.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Gearhouse happy hour on December 30th. A little bit of an audible here. We're going on a Wednesday instead of Thursday because of the New Year's Eve holiday. We're going to talk about some winter sports stories. We did some winter features over the last couple of weeks on our social media. This week's podcast was a story about yours truly and my dad in a little bit of a scary situation up on Big White in Kelowna, BC. Definitely go check that one out. I can highly recommend it. Chap was cracking up so much that he had to stay muted most of the time. Actually,
I bet that was like maybe the least
Really?
I've actually talked in one of our repotting podcasts because I could not stop laughing at both the way Mark told the story and the way Brian told the story was just fabulous. Go check it out. That's what is it called, Brian? What's that podcast called on the web?
It's called Story Time with Mark Shoney and Chris Wilsey. Chris joined us as well to add some of his input and share a couple of his stories, which we might hear some of those here as well from Chris. But that was a really fun one for me and my dad to kind of relive and rehash per se. It's a fun one. It's probably my closest near death experience, and it was when I was 6 or 7. So it was quite the wild ride.
That's awesome.
Yeah, go ahead if you wanna. I don't know if you want to start us off or if you want me and Chris to start off. We're just gonna tell some more Big White stories. We were debriefing about some fun ones ahead of time.
Yeah.
But
no, I definitely think Big White's a good place. That or good kind of story from your guys' end, because you guys grew up going there, right? That was kind of like your childhood mountain. That was something that you guys did every year, right?
Before we get started, let's do a little cheers. I got my obligatory happy hour beer here.
Woo!
And everybody else is probably drinking something else. It looks like Chris has got a protein shake, which is
Sparkling.
very up his alley.
Hot black coffee in our beautiful rerouted mugs.
There we go.
But no, so Brian, not only do I have a story I actually wanted to share today, maybe my most memorable ski adventure.
Nice.
So it was when I was on my van road trip. So I'm living in my Westphalia. I met a buddy of mine in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, not Montana. I don't know what I'm talking about. In Jackson Hole. And it was the middle of winter, right? 10 degrees or less outside. The van has no insulation. That Westphalia had no insulation.
Oh,
my buddy
I slept in it a couple times.
My buddy, my dog, his dog, all cuddled, same bed. It was the only way we could stay warm. But about 2 days into the trip, we'd gotten a couple easy days of skiing, did some pit digging because we were all backcountry. So we did some digging to make sure that the Abbey conditions were good. We were doing some testing. We actually met another college buddy of mine who came up for the day, and we were going to go do a mountain called 25 Short. And it's called that because it's 25 feet short of 14,000 feet. It's a 13,000 foot mountain, and we were going to summit it. We were going to ski down it. It was going to be awesome. I literally woke up that morning, and I had never felt more sick in my entire life. I felt like I was going to throw up. I had a horrible headache. I was congested. I was so sick. I took a boatload of NyQuil and I put my freaking blinders on and I just hauled. I went for it anyways. I was throwing up the whole time. Like, we did it though. It was like an 8.5, 9 mile uphill hike. We did like 3,500 feet of vertical, and I have never felt worse in my entire life than when I was sitting on the top. I thought I was going to pass out. My buddies were like, "Chap, are you okay?" I was like, I'm fine. It's okay. I'm fine. And we just went. And I kid you not, you guys, I got 3,000 vertical feet of absolutely untracked shoulder deep powder. It was every single turn I made face shots up into the shoulders. The whole ride down, we got to the flat at the end, and there was like a 3-mile hike out. And I literally sat down and took a nap before I finished the hike. I finished the downhill, sat down in the tree, and I fell asleep for like 45 minutes. And my buddies like stood around and waited for me because they saw that I had pushed it. But you guys, like that ski downhill, I will never, ever, 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 ever be able to repeat that experience. There's a phrase when you're backcountry skiing called earn your turns. And I felt like I earned every single one of those turns. And I will never forget that day. We ended up not sleeping in the Westfalia that night. We went and bought a hotel room, and I took a long hot shower and slept for like 2.5 days. But it was fantastic. And I would make all the same choices all over again.
Well, I'm going to start by saying anybody that hasn't desperately cuddled with someone for the to get warm at night has probably hasn't been in too treacherous of conditions. That's a pretty common thing when it gets a little too cold out there. So much respect, chap, for doing what you need to do in that situation. Chris, that sounds a lot like your experience with Booster up on the cliff. This is a story that Chris told as well during this story time that we did with Chris and my dad. But why don't you just when Chap was talking about fresh powder all the way up to his face every single turn. That reminds me of your experience on the cliff with Booster there at Big White.
Yeah, happy to go through it again. I thankfully was feeling totally fine the morning that I went out with Booster, unlike Chap over here. It was early though. So Booster, just for a little bit of frame of reference for everybody, it was like the coolest ski instructor on the mountain in terms of just exactly what you might think. He was tall, long blonde hair, kind of looked like Thor, just balled out on skis. He could ski everything from deep backcountry to doing backflips in the ski park. Like he was just the man. He was just a mountain stud, just lived on the mountain pretty much all year round. I'm pretty sure taught in the winter, hiked in the summers and the spring. And he was also on like the avalanche squad. So he was like an A+ skier, just a prime athlete on this mountain. And because he was on this sort of like avalanche duty team, he knew, and had insights that there was going to be a big snow day coming up on the cliff. They'd, I think, scouted out the night before to make sure that all this new snow coming in wasn't going to cause issues for people and that it'd be safe to ski the next day. Well, it just so happened that we had a lesson scheduled for that day. And we were out at, first break, first chair up, and first chair up, first T-bar up, getting ourselves up to the top of the cliff. We get to the top, and I think I was probably maybe 14.
Just for some reference, the T-bar is it's not a chairlift. It's a bar in the shape of a T that you kind of not really sit on. You just kind of stand in front of it, and it just pulls you up, and you're kind of skiing. It's almost like a rope tow, but you don't actually have to hang on. You kind of let it push you from behind. And then the cliff that he's talking about is one of the legendary runs at Big White in Kelowna, BC. It's really, really tough. It's we had a cliff story on the podcast there with me and my dad. That's where I had my experience. Definitely go listen to that podcast. All right, Chris, continue. I just wanted to give a little background about what the cliff is, what the T-bar is, because those are colloquial terms for you and I, but maybe not so much for any of our listeners.
Right. And the reason that they have a T-bar set up is just because it's more space efficient than a lift. You're going maybe the top third of the mountain, but it takes you to the top of the mountain. And then from there is a cliff chair, which is a normal, sit down lift chair that you can take up. And so you can just smash runs on the cliff. So we were about to set first tracks on the cliff, and we're looking over the side. And like I was about to say, I was probably about 14. I think my younger brother Dave was there. He was he would have been 12, and that would have put Dan, Brian's older brother, was also there at about 18, and I think that was about right. So we were good. Like we were probably above average skiers just because we did a lot of skiing, and we were old enough that this wasn't a crazy thing. We were just pumped to get out there. And when you're looking at it, it's hard to judge because you're looking at, basically a steep bowl, your drop off, and you can't really tell what's going on down there. We just knew that everything was covered, pure white, couldn't see any tree tips or anything. And we start going down, and you're just blasting through this run, just huge carvers cruising down. And, everyone's just doing their own thing, all the snow is fresh, so you're just kind of wandering off wherever on the cliff here. We kind of meet down at the bottom of the run, and we were going to take the chair back up, and we're looking at each other. We're kind of like, oh, did you fall? No. Did you fall? I don't think anybody fell. We all got down pretty quickly. Like, what's going on here? And the reason that we were asking these questions is because every single person had snow just like packed into the top of their helmet and sitting on top of their goggles and like on their shoulders and stuff. And like our hoods had snow all up inside them. And we confirmed that nobody had fallen. And we realized, and I think it was Dan who realized this, he was like, oh, shoot, like, I think we were just skiing through snow that was probably literally up to our eyeballs. And what was happening is as you were hitting these big cruisers and you're kind of sitting into your turns, we were literally ducking down underneath the snow level, popping back up, ducking down underneath the snow level, popping back up, and doing that time over time down the run. We just had snow literally all over ourselves. Like Chap, one of the best ski runs I think I've ever had in my entire life.
That's awesome. I know that there are a bunch of booster stories that you guys have. It's funny because you probably only took like what 3 or 4 lessons with booster your entire life, but you have I mean as many stories or more. I bet you've got 3 or 4 stories from each lesson that you take with him because every time they're only an couple hour lessons, right? But he'll take you on some funny in some funny places. He'll do some crazy stuff. But he was definitely a legend there at Big White.
Well, and that's something I want to tag into the way Chris is referencing Boomer,
Booster.
Booster, like the jump in skiing.
Yep.
It's a booster jump. That makes a lot of sense. So point being is booster that you guys, any sport that you do, any activity you do, as you're starting to learn and take these lessons in these local areas, there's these freaking legends and you can just feel it. You sense it. You see that in the vibe. And it sounds very much like I can place booster in my head, not because I did a bunch of skiing lessons, but because of whitewater guides I knew, because of climbing legends that I knew that put up routes all over the area, ice climbers I knew that are just these legendary characters. They are always out for an adventure. Sam, I know you grew up skiing here in Taos. And so Taos is an amazing backcountry ski area, amazing front country ski area. So Sam, let's hear. And you lived in Crested Butte. You were skier pro expert. Let's hear what you got. Give us one.
I would just add one thing about Booster while Sam's getting ready there is when we talk about Booster and this like legacy that he's left behind, it sounds like we're talking about this guy who's just like still an absolute monster in like his mid 40s, mid 50s. No, he was probably like 24 and already had this legacy. Like my brother Dan was probably only like 5 or 6 years younger than him, but just like he every single time, every place that he went, he did something interesting, something crazy. He was a really really cool guy. What would be really interesting, Chris, is if we ever talk to Booster again. I doubt that we will. I doubt that we'll ever find him. But it would be really interesting to see if we could ever talk to Booster again and just see if he get his craziest story. Right? Like what's we all have our craziest story that happened with Booster, but what was his craziest story?
Yeah, I mean, we
ahead,
probably will never run into him because Booster definitely belongs to the mountain now, But I mean, I would have to imagine that one of his craziest stories would be like doing avalanche stuff and like actually being caught up in some big snow tumble going down the like restricted area on the edge of the cliff there or the backside of the cliff doing some crazy stuff back in there. But yeah, he was awesome. Wild guy. And I hope he's doing well. Booster, if you're watching this at some point in your life, hit us up. Come on the Rerouted podcast.
So I also am a skier. Pretty sure I had my first pair of skis when I was 2 years old. Learning to walk was definitely part of learning to ski. So that's something that I've always done. My passion for it has definitely like waned, and I found love for other sports. It's definitely my dad's world, and I will always love skiing. But yeah, I have some pretty crazy stories. I definitely, in my younger days, chased skiing over everything else. Um, Took me a while to go to college because I was skiing. And that's kind of what you did. So, yeah, actually one of the best days I've had skiing, and I've had a lot. But in more recently was when I first moved back to Taos a couple years ago. And I had bought a season pass for the following year. And because I bought a season pass for the following year, I got to ski like the last month of skiing, which was pretty freaking awesome that I could use my pass for the next year that year. And we had a pretty big powder day. It was like a Wednesday, and I made sure I was up there. I was like on one of the first chairs, and I hiked the ridge instead of going to the chair that takes you. So I went and hiked the ridge, and I had one of the best runs I've ever had. So the ridge is definitely, it's like, probably very similar to what you guys were doing in Big White. It's the very top of the mountain. It's steep cliffs, very narrow chutes. But I've had not lucky enough to have powder that I was like dipping down into, but I had powder that was probably mid thigh.
Were you lucky enough to not roll down the entire thing and almost die? Go check out the podcast, by the way.
Yes, I did not. No. I've had days where I rolled, but this was not one of them. And thankfully, I was the first person on this run, and I'm pretty sure I got very close to getting the first 3 loops on that run before somebody else scoped it out. But I was all by myself. It was a ski day where like I hadn't gone with anybody. I was like doing my own thing, so it was very kind of like peaceful, and I was just like totally just digging it, and I was making some sweet turns. And that was just a couple years ago. But more recently, actually, Chap and I got my whole backcountry set up, but I don't have my Avi certification, so haven't been doing a ton of backcountry skiing unless I go with my dad and Chap. But Chap and I have gotten really into cross country skiing, which is really fun. Not as fun as like making the steep turns, but
I just want to tap into that, Sam. She's right. We have gotten really into cross country recently. And, I think that we love it because it's much more of a family experience for us with our freaking dogs. Like, you can't take the dogs to the ski area. That's non-negotiable. I did it once, tried to go backcountry with them, and that was one of the worst experiences I've ever had. I actually got dragged on my face by the 3 dogs on leashes for probably 300 yards down the front of the ski area in front of like 600 people that are just watching me being dragged on the ice by my dogs, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. So that's stopped. I'm not doing that anymore. But when we're going cross country skiing, there's a big dog area and there's a bunch of wilderness areas out here that get enough snow. So we just go cross country skiing out in like BLM land, and we love doing that with our doggos.
it's the first time that like and it wasn't just Chap. Like you're kind of like a duck, like a you don't really know how to, because I don't know, it's just different. It's not like skiing. And so when you go down the hill for the very first time, like Chap's like a very athletic person and is very coordinated. I never saw him eat shit so many times in a day the first day we went cross country skiing. Like
So many times. I felt like I got hit by a truck.
it was hilarious. Like I started feeling bad for him by the end, but it was pretty funny to just like watch him like consistently just like eat it.
So let me say for the record, if you were going out as your first time ever cross-country skiing, you do not need to fall the way I fell. I pretended that I had 10 years of experience, which is why I fell as many times as I did on my first day. Carter, I know you have been a long time snowboarder, and I know you've been all over the country doing all sorts of cool stuff. I know you got a good story for us.
A snowboarding story? Oh yeah. I have one where I was a little bit helpless. It wasn't scary as much as funny. It had just so I got to go snowboarding in Japan for 2 months when I was in high school. And one of the days we were there, it snowed 5 feet over the course of like 2 days. So it was all there. It was 5 feet of snow. The one thing about these Japanese resorts is they're not that steep. And they don't let you go. A lot of them will like take it real seriously if you go in the woods. So you're stuck to the not very steep, normal runs. And so me and my buddy decided, okay, well, this is an extra day. We didn't have it planned out, but it just snowed 5 feet. We're going to go. And my very first run down, I had a great time on the first run. It's, steep enough. 5 feet of snow is, kind of hard to ski through though. And right when it softened out, I just went headfirst into the 5 feet of snow and got stuck. Completely stuck. Like I could breathe well enough and could kind of like yell. But I was just like, oh no, I don't know what to do. My arms are down here and I can't get them up here to my feet. And like, I'm super, super, super stuck. So I waited and I waited and waited and waited for, I don't remember how long. It felt like an hour. It was probably like 10 minutes. But some like little Japanese guy, like I say that because this guy was very small. He was like probably like 4 or 5, came and he's like, hey, what's the problem? Help me. So, dug me out and went through this whole process, get me out of the snow. Yeah, that was just absurd. It was the first time I had ever skied in more than 6 inches of snow too. So I went from 6 inches to 5 feet and it didn't work out too great.
Oh man, that's funny, Carter.
That was fun.
And you don't have like the like
momentum.
Thank you. I was like, what word am I looking for? Momentum to like get you through that like super deep snow. Like if you don't have that and you get stuck,
oh, you're screwed. Yeah, especially on a snowboard too.
Around, yeah, like that's when you start like digging in with your snowboard and you take it off and you start just like kind of hopping it.
Yeah, I did one of those things when you get tired, and you just are like, I give up. I'm gonna let my nose go down into the snow. And
sorry. So I just have a short story because what Carter just said remind me. So like when I was living in Crested Butte, I was being an idiot one day, and I was with my friend. I don't really even remember like the circumstances to why this happened, but I decided that I was gonna go off, like we were out of bounds somewhere that we shouldn't have been, and I like it had snowed a lot. Like Crested Butte gets a lot of snow, and I get down to the bottom of this thing and I can't get it. I'm gonna have to hike back out, and oh my freaking God, that was like the worst 3 hours of my life. It took me 3 hours to probably get 200 feet to get back to the top because it was so deep. Like the snow was so thick and so deep. And I'm like trying to like carry my skis and like make it back to I spent like I got done with that day and I was like, you idiot.
Brian, I know that you've got stories for us. Sam, that's awesome. And I love that. I can't tell you how many times I've been backcountry skiing, ended up in a flat area and been hiking out through thigh deep powder. And it is heinous. It is a horrible experience and it takes every bit of your energy.
I didn't have like skins. I was like on a downhill ski setup. I was like in the ski area. I just like wasn't somewhere I was supposed to be. Like goofing off, and I was like, oh look, I'm gonna get some sweet fresh turns, and then I couldn't get out of it. So I had to hike back out.
Oh man. Did I tell last week, did we talk about on the show my hitchhiking on open truck beds, snowy mountain passes, or did I share that with you guys personally? Do you remember?
I feel like you shared it on something, but go ahead and share it again.
Oh, this is quick. This is super brief. And then I know Brian's got a bunch of good stuff. I think I've never been more scared in my entire life than when I've hitchhiked back up mountain passes in Colorado with all my backcountry ski gear. And we've been in an open truck bed with 10 people. And this dude's whipping 60 miles an hour up snowy mountain passes. That is horrifying. But that's it. That's what I got. Brian.
Well, yeah, I'm actually going to toss back to Chris for one, and then we can go to me. But Chris, you shared this on the podcast as well. But we're talking about getting stuck right now, and this is going to be another booster story. But Chris, talk to me a little bit about. This is just there's no shame in getting stuck. It literally happens to the best of us. And exemplified by Booster taking one small detour and ending up stuck in a tree well for like 30 minutes. So Chris, tell us about that one. We'll just kind of frame this a little bit. Big White is kind of broken up into I call it 3 different mountains. There's if you're looking at the map, there's the left side, which is kind of it's got the emblematic thing is the Gem Lake Express, which is a chair that goes literally all the way from the bottom of the mountain to the top. It's the 3rd highest chair on the mountain, and it goes straight, and it's the lowest chair. So it starts the lowest and it goes to the 3rd highest. It's about a 25-minute chairlift. The shortest run on Gem Lake is over 4 miles. So it's an incredible experience to go there and just kind of like have really, really long runs. But on the opposite side of the mountain, it's called Black Forest Chair, and there's a lot of really cool trees and stuff. So Chris, tell us about Booster getting stuck in a tree well.
So I'm fairly certain that we were on the way to Black Forest. And I think it was actually the same day as this cliff adventure I had talked about before. One of the ways to get to Black Forest is you can go to the top, bomb the cliff. And then, as Chap was saying, on catwalks, you kind of go through this massive catwalk and then get your way over to Black Forest kind of through a catwalk. But it's an enjoyable one because you're in the trees and you can pop off the catwalk as long as you know where you're going and still like make it out to the bottom of the chair, no problem. Many a time getting stuck on that catwalk and having to ice skate yourself for what feels like 35 minutes at the bottom of the cliff to get over there.
The thing is, if you don't bomb like the second half of the cliff, basically, you're going to have to hike. You're going to have to hike on this cat. It's a really, really long kind of runoff that gets you over to Black Forest. And if you don't decide, when you're 60% done with your run, if you don't just straight shot it and hope that you don't fall, you're looking at hiking through this on this catwalk there. But that's a really good point, Chris.
And so on this day, we had successfully made the bomb. We were, like I mentioned before, we were old enough. We were fearless. We were literally bombing the. I think on that run, Booster just took off and just straight shot the whole thing. And we were like, oh, shoot. Well, there goes our instructor. We might as well get on our horses here. So we just, and we had so much powder that you didn't even have to turn. You didn't have to worry about anything. You're just kind of floating. So we literally just sat back like we were sitting in an office chair and just straight shot the whole thing. And so we made it through the catwalk, and then, it's kind of leisurely on the other side of the catwalk, and we're kind of just on the catwalk chatting, dipping in and out. And we were having like a quick conversation with him, just sort of trying to figure out like what we were doing next. And next thing we noticed, he's just not there anymore. We're just kind of dipping. If you can picture, there's a catwalk, but there's some offshoots and it's very sparse trees and not very large trees. So we're just kind of hitting snow, weaving. And next thing you know, we're weaving and he's gone. We don't see him anymore. And it takes a second to realize, but you're like, oh, that guy in the big red suit just isn't there anymore. So we kind of stop and we look back. And I think it was either Dan or Dave. It might have been Dave because he might have been just a little bit behind us, being the youngest. I don't think, and being a little bit more risk averse than us, to be honest, when we were skiing. He might have been behind, and he goes, I think I might have heard something back there. So we kind of like skate back a little ways, and we just see some shuffling moving behind this tree. Well, what had ended up happening is he had gone just off the catwalk a little bit, gone around a tree, and just not come out the other side of that tree. And what ended up happening was on the backside, there was this massive drift into this, probably the deepest tree well I've ever seen, especially on a tree, like I said, is probably only a 10-foot tall tree. And he was just in it. I mean, he had flipped full, like face first into this tree well, just tumbled. And what Dave heard was kind of that cartoonish, like, thump of him hitting the snow. Snow had probably gone up all over the place. And we get back there, and in typical Booster fashion, again, he wasn't that old. He's probably in his mid-20s or early 20s. And in typical Booster fashion, he goes, well, I figured because we're heading over to the Black Forest chair, this would be a great time to teach all of you how to properly get out of a tree well.
He tried to play it off like he was creating a learning experience for these guys when really he had just, face planted into a tree well and gotten stuck.
He had just face planted into a tree well. And to be fair, he did teach us some kind of cool thing with taking your poles and putting your skis up, and you can like lock your poles behind them and kind of climb your way out. And like it ended up being useful. But to Brian's point before is that, especially when there's lots of powder, don't ever be afraid of falling. Everybody does it, including Booster.
It's the best part of powder. You can just like try to do front flips and be fine if you land on your head. Well, not all. Make sure it's deep enough. But that's not advice.
Yeah, we don't give that kind of advice here, Carter. But no, seriously, those are all really, really awesome stories, you guys. And I think you guys can tell that we're all pretty excited for winter. I actually know that Sam and I have some backcountry skiing in our weekend future to go get the dogs a bunch of exercise. So we're ready, man. It feels good. We got about 6 inches of snow out here last week, and it's still coming. So we're ready for winter here at Rerouted. We're working hard to get a bunch of good stuff listed up for you guys. We're also really excited about the new year. I think we got a bunch of big stuff coming your guys' way. There's a bunch of really exciting stuff that we've been working on back on the back end to really bring an amazing service to you guys come 2021. So you guys, we're really excited to be here as always. It's been a long year. This year has. It's been pretty cool though that not only have we had this team that's here right now supporting each other, we also have the love and appreciation of all of you guys out in the audience. So we're really, really grateful to you guys because you guys are the reason we're doing what we're doing. And so ultimately, this is another year that gets us one step closer to streamlining the used gear exchange for you guys. I don't know. You guys got anything else to say as the last huzzah for 2020 to all of the Rerouted audience?
Shop used outdoor gear.
That's a good one. Anybody else? Carter, can't hear you. Oh, doesn't matter. You don't want to say it? You sure? Okay. Brian, Chris, you got anything for 2020?
Just thank you all for sticking with us and just know that we've got big things coming in 2021.
Yeah.
Stick around. Enjoy the ride.
Thank you to everybody. Obviously, this year hasn't been the easiest year for anyone. But it's a great time to get outdoors, and it's a great time to kind of utilize some of the outdoor spaces that are available to us in the U.S. and across the world. But 2021 is going to be a really exciting time. I hope that everybody has a safe and happy New Year.
Hey, everybody give each other a round of applause. Really, really nice job, everybody. Good work. Happy New Year's. And I'll see everybody in freaking 2021 because nobody's working tomorrow. What? All right. Well, I mean, I'm working tomorrow, but I think everybody else gets it.
I think everybody that's watching isn't working tomorrow.
We just had a phone call where we decided to set up a meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, I would argue that everybody here that's on this call is probably working tomorrow, but everybody that's watching this call is likely not working tomorrow.
It's because we care. That's what it is. It's because we care. All right, everybody. Happy hour. Happy New Year. Happy holidays. We love everybody here. Thanks, guys. We'll catch you guys in